What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And yesterday was an eventful day for the Giants. Big blockbuster trade, big free agency signings. Joe Schoen was a busy man yesterday. And of course, we had a lot to talk about, but today, not so much, a little bit quieter. The Giants did most of their action on day one of the legal tampering period. Today, only one notable signing, actually the only signing they made in general. We'll see, maybe while we're recording this, some news will break live like it did a couple days ago or yesterday with Xavier McKinney. But in this episode, we want to focus in on the one signing that the New York Giants made, quarterback Drew Lock. That's right, guys. The Giants did sign a quarterback. Daniel Jones still recovering from his ACL tear. Quarterback still an option for the Giants in the draft. We'll talk about that a little bit more in this episode. But Drew Lock is the signing. They were reportedly interested in Jameis Winston. His price tag probably went a little higher than they wanted it to. I think it was closer to the 8-point-something million range. So they're going 1 year's $5 million with Drew Lock. Funny enough, I believe that's the same price tag for Tyrod Taylor, who just left the Giants to go sign with the New York Jets. So instead, they pivot and they go ahead with Drew Lock, the 27-year-old former second-round pick in 2019 NFL Draft. Kind of an exciting signing. I like this one. I want to give my thoughts. I'm excited to do so. But before I do, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. Listen to Apple or Spotify. Please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what is your reaction to this Drew Lock signing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I mean, after yesterday, you end up with a couple offensive linemen, a Devin Singletary, who, by the way, I think Devin Singletary is a really underrated signing. Obviously, he's not Saquon Barkley, but Singletary is a high-motor guy. You know, really solid back, was really good for the Texans last year. And Carmen Bracillo, obviously, has a solid blocking scheme when it comes to running the football. I think we're going to get a lot of production out of him personally. I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants also drafted a running back, so we'll see what happens there. But looking at this Drew Lock signing, I mean, the Giants needed a backup, and a lot of people, let's quell one concern that people have right now. I know people are probably rushing to the comment section. The Giants are not drafting a quarterback. We got Drew Lock as our backup. Guys, if Drew Lock is the reason we don't draft a quarterback, we have much bigger problems, okay? Much bigger. We have Joe Schoen doing ridiculous things up there if Drew Lock is the reason the Giants don't draft a quarterback. If you are thinking that right now, that this has any effect on what the Giants do in the draft, please take a deep breath and understand that Drew Lock is in a 1-year, $5 million guaranteed deal. If they wanted to bring in a long-term backup for Daniel Jones, it would have been a multi-year deal for a guy like Tyrod. It would have been a multi-year deal for a guy like Jameis Winston. It would have been a 2-3-year contract for a backup to make sure that in case Daniel Jones went down, they had a reserve just in case that could win football games. Instead, the Giants did the exact opposite. They went for a 1-year, $5 million deal, so that way they can get out of that contract very easily. And if they go with a rookie quarterback in the draft, they'll have a really good option to, decide, well, we'll just move on from Drew Lock, or worst case scenario, if there's a circus going on, you just freaking cut him. It's 1 year's $5 million. That's not going to compromise the Giants' ability to draft a quarterback if one is available. Now, obviously, that's a big what if. We don't know if Drake May will fall. We don't know what the situation is. And I think right now the consensus, Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2, 3 could be Drake May or JJ McCarthy. We'll see what happens. But the Giants will be able to get one of those top 4 guys. And based on the fact that next year's draft class at the quarterback position is a little bit iffy, I wouldn't be surprised if they took a shot on one of those quarterbacks this year, whether it be in a trade up or simply staying put and taking the guy that's available. So we'll see how things progress over the next couple of weeks. But for now, Drew Lock is a good option for the Giants. Why? He takes shots. He's got a cannon for an arm. He can throw the ball downfield. He's competent, and he has experience, right? He may not be Tyrod Taylor, but at the very least, Drew Lock can stay healthy. Tyrod Taylor, every time he was touched last year, I was like, this guy's getting hurt. And every time he got touched, he got hurt. So, Anthony, when you're looking at Drew Lock, why do you think he fits this offense? Obviously, the strong arm is something that we love. Throw the ball downfield, be explosive, take opportunities. If you're a backup quarterback, playing conservative football isn't going to do you any good. You want to be aggressive, try to produce some offense. Drew Lock can certainly do that for the Giants as a last resort.
Yeah, what do I like about Drew Lock? I like that he's got a pair on him. He's not afraid to throw the ball downfield. That's what I'm trying to see. Listen, man, back last season, it was really tough sometimes because this offense just could not make explosive plays. There's one thing to be a bad football team that can't win games. It's another thing to be a bad football team that can't even create explosive plays and be fun to watch at any point, right? Like the Giants watching that offense was like watching paint dry half of the 2023 season. Even when the Giants were bad, when Eli Manning was the quarterback, like I'm talking 2014, 15, 16, they still had OBJ and Eli. Even 2018, when Saquon was a rookie, it was a bad team. They didn't win a lot of games, but at least you got to see some cool things happen every now and then, right? You'd see some big explosive touchdowns. Last season, you didn't even have that. It was just boring. It was miserable. I hated watching the Giants play most of the time. Down the stretch, of course, Tyrod Taylor came in, made some big throws deep to Darius Slayton. He took some shots. I loved that. I was like, oh my God, thank you, Tyrod, for giving me something to watch, something exciting that happens on my TV screen rather than the Giants just losing these mundane efforts. Now, Tommy DeVito also did that. He had some exciting plays as well, but just in totality, I like seeing a quarterback that throws the ball downfield. If we're not going to win games, at least keep it competitive, make it fun. Drew Lock will do that. So if he does start games for the Giants in 2023, you can expect him to go out there and rip some throws that you're not expecting most quarterbacks to rip, right? He's going to take some chances, and I love that. And I think that Brian Dable loves that as well, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why Drew Lock was a target for them. Brian Dable likes those gunslingers. Look at Josh Allen. He likes those quarterbacks that are willing to push the ball downfield. That's why Tyrod Taylor found so much success down the final stretch of the season last year. So Drew Lock, if he does step in, and he does have to start games for the Giants, I think you're going to see more explosive plays get drawn up, more shot plays, more downfield throws. Not saying he's super accurate and he hits them like on the money all the time. Drew Lock takes his chances. Sometimes he shouldn't. He did lead the NFL in interceptions in 2020 through 15 picks. But listen, I like a guy who pushes the ball downfield. At least he'll give me something exciting to watch. So for that reason alone, my personal, I want to watch fun football reason, I like the Drew Lock signing. But further than that, it doesn't affect the Giants' draft plans. Excuse me. Signing Drew Lock does not prevent the Giants from drafting a quarterback in any way whatsoever. So if the Giants decide we want to take J.J. McCarthy or Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whoever, with a top 10 pick, Drew Lock does not prevent them from doing exactly that. So that's another positive to this one. And then here's the main thing that I want to hit on for this signing. In case any Giants fans are wondering, why sign a quarterback? We still have Daniel Jones, and if we're going to draft somebody, we still have Tommy DeVito. What's the point in even drafting or signing a quarterback in free agency? And this is how I'll break it down for you. Daniel Jones might be ready for week 1. Yes, he could play in week 1. And this Drew Lock signing might not even affect that. Maybe Daniel Jones does play in week 1. But the Giants need multiple quarterbacks on their roster for OTAs and training camp and preseason. Even if you think Daniel Jones is ready for week 1 and you want him to play in week 1, you don't want him to play in the preseason and get hurt before week 1, right? So somebody has to go out there and play quarterback in the preseason. Drew Lock, he's a good player for a backup role that can play in the preseason. Additionally, there's a lot of moving parts on this Giants offense right now. New running back is starting in the backfield. New offensive line coach, plus brand new offensive linemen across the board. The offensive line configuration, night and day difference. Somebody needs to be practicing with these guys at the start of the offseason activities to the end of the offseason activities, gaining some chemistry, building some continuity, and building an understanding of what this offense is going to look like. Daniel Jones cannot do all of those things. He's not going to be healthy in time for the start of offseason training activities. So you can't have one quarterback constantly under center this offseason unless you sign somebody. And that's what the Giants did. They signed Drew Lock. That's the real takeaway from this, guys. It's not Drew Lock is gunning for Daniel Jones' job, which honestly, maybe he is. Maybe he is trying to compete and take it, and he'll have a head start because he's healthy and can do all of those offseason training activities and play in training camp and all that stuff. But that's really what this is for. This is the main benefit to the Giants. They want somebody who's able to be there for the start of the offseason activities to the end of the offseason activities and be ready for week 1. Daniel Jones, who knows if he's ready for week 1? We've talked about it. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But in any emergency scenario, now you know that Drew Lock will be ready for week 1 and he will be available and present at all of the offseason practices and training activities, which is what's really important for the New York Giants. You got to keep in mind, guys, new offensive line coach coming in, they are installing a brand new blocking scheme. So the quarterback needs to be on the same page with his offensive coordinator and his offensive line coach about that. Drew Lock will be there for the start of offseason activities, so he will be on the same page as Carmen Bristolo and Mike Kafka. Daniel Jones, maybe not as much. He's not there to walk through the new plays and sit in the meetings while they're installing the new blocking schemes and new game plans. So it's just really important that the Giants have a healthy body and a capable player who can start games in a pinch for them this upcoming season. Having a backup quarterback Look at the New York Jets. They learned how valuable it is to have a backup quarterback that can go out there and play for you in a spot. So now the Giants have that with Drew Lock. It's a really important signing, but again, it doesn't prevent them from going ahead and drafting any quarterback because at the end of the day, yes, you have Drew Lock there for all of those OTAs. You can have a rookie in there as well. You still might not want to start the rookie in week 1. Maybe even still, Daniel Jones is hurt. He's not able to start. Drew Lock is ready to go. You let him start, even though you have this rookie. Maybe you don't want to rush him on the field too soon. Give him extra time to learn. Now the Giants have a little bit more flexibility in their quarterback room. They don't have to rush anything. They can just sit there calmly and let the quarterbacks play and actually be prepared for week 1. So that's why I like this signing, guys. It's not like I'm going to sit here and tell you he's stealing Daniel Jones' job. It's possible because he's going to be there for all those OTAs where Daniel Jones might not be. So yes, it's possible that the Giants prefer to hand him the starting job in week 1, but this is not a long-term solution. This is no big-time signing for the Giants. This is simply put, they needed a body to be their backup quarterback and install all their new tweaks to their offensive game plan, and that's what Drew Lock is going to be there for. He's their offseason quarterback, and hopefully not much longer than that. So it's a good signing. I like it. High upside backup, gunslinger, pushes the ball downfield, fits that Brian Dable archetype, that mold. So I'm a big fan of the Drew Lock signing. It's low risk, high reward. I mean, maybe the reward isn't too high, but it's definitely low risk. So that's something that I do like about it. But Alex, any other thoughts on the quarterback situation? How you think this might affect the draft plans? I know we said it doesn't really affect them, but just overall, any other thoughts on Drew Lock stepping in here and, kind of being that off-season quarterback that helps the Giants get through their practices leading up to the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is kind of the conversation we were having just before the episode started was Daniel Jones is going to miss like a good portion of the summer, right? He's not going to be available to actually play in the game probably after week 1 is what the estimation is right now. Is he going to be able to lead the offense at a full capacity during training camp? Right now, I'd say probably not. If that's the case, we're going into the regular season with Drew Lock as the expected starter, right? So let's assume that Drew Lock starts week 1 and week 2 and Daniel Jones returns in week 3. Let's just take an estimated guess. When Daniel Jones returns in week 3, you're going to have to inject a player into the offense where, one, he's in practice, he shouldn't be getting the QB1 reps because you need Drew Lock to be ready for a week-by-week basis, right? So he's going to be taking those QB2 reps as he ramps up. Then you're going to have him play in week 3 when the Giants are pretty much like getting into the flow of the season. Now their entire offense changes because you have your quarterback back in the fold, and he has to now ramp up from having an ACL tear and a neck injury last year. It could take him upwards of 4 or 5 weeks to actually start gaining ground and progress, and that's not even to mention running the football. He's not going to be able to run the football the same way to start the year. They're going to have him stay in the pocket, not run the ball, because they're going to want to protect that knee as he builds confidence on it. So you can basically assume that our offense is going to be an absolute shell of itself from weeks 1 to like 8. So the Giants are probably going to lose the majority of those games. If you think about it from that logical standpoint, if you want to go with a more optimistic take, Daniel Jones doesn't skip a beat. He walks in week 1, takes the job back, doesn't actually need that much time to continue to progress through the rehab, and he makes ridiculous progress, and he's okay. That's the optimistic perspective, not the realistic one. It could happen. You never know. But right now, I think the more likely scenario is the Giants draft a quarterback, and they have 3 quarterbacks. And basically, they say to themselves, well, let's let the best man win. Daniel Jones, if you play your ass off in summer and you look really good, then we'll use you, and whoever we draft will be a bridge for a year and, take over in 2025. But, at the same time, you want that young quarterback to be getting reps, and Drew Lock is really there as insurance. To me, it was the length of the contract that was really telling, not the price per se. If they went and got a player for 3 years, 2-3 years, be like, okay, like they're obviously trying to situate something, but now I don't necessarily know. But we'll see what happens, Anthony. What does the length of this contract tell you?
Yeah, I like the length of it. I think it being a 1-year deal is important, and I think that it does indicate this is not something that prevents the Giants from going after a quarterback in the draft. I mean, listen, if it was a 2-year deal, I think probably I would feel the same way. If it was a 3-year deal, that would be really interesting because it would feel more so like they want this guy on the roster. But a 1-year prove-it deal for Drew Lock as a backup quarterback, it kind of tells me like they're feeling comfortable enough to add some flexibility to this quarterback room because they feel like something else is going to be here long term. And we know that they don't feel that way. Well, we think we know that Daniel Jones won't be the one here long term. He probably gets cut next offseason. So what I think they're trying to do is wipe the slate clean on that quarterback room in 2025 with just a rookie quarterback held over. Now, easier said than done. We've talked about this plenty. Trading up to draft a quarterback isn't going to be easy. Having one fall into their laps at 6 isn't going to be easy. But with Drew Lock here for 1 year, again, a solid backup. We'll see where Daniel Jones is with his injury and whether or not he plays this season. Excuse me. But with a rookie quarterback in place after this draft, you can have him on that 5-year deal with the fifth-year option, of course. But then next year, he's the only quarterback that you have on your roster because you're probably not going to re-sign Drew Lock, or you're probably going to cut Daniel Jones. But maybe you do re-sign Drew Lock next year if you want him to be your long-term backup. But the 1-year deal, the length of the contract, it doesn't really tell me too much, doesn't tell me too little, just tells me, listen, the Giants needed a backup for now, and they'll figure out the rest later. But this does not change their plans in the draft, in my opinion. I still think they're going to be looking at quarterbacks. But, Alex, free agency moves on, right? We're on day 2 right now. Day 3 tomorrow is the first official day of the new league year, so we're going to get more information on these contracts. We saw the deal that Brian Burns signed, and we saw how the cap hits were placed. A lot of the guaranteed money at the beginning of the deal, not towards the end of the deal. Thought that was pretty interesting. But looking at these contracts, it's going to change tomorrow. But then we'll see where the Giants' cap space is at. Do they have enough to keep signing players? They still have some needs to fill, right? What are some of the needs, Alex, that you think the Giants still need to address with this free agency as it moves on? I think cornerback, safety, obviously with McKinney leaving, although Dane Belton seems ready to step into a larger role. There's still a few needs and priorities for the Giants left over. So what are you seeing, and who do you think are some of the potential targets that they could go after?
Well, we've already addressed the offensive line, running back, quarterback, pass rush. So, the positions that really stand out to me, of course, cornerback and safety. Safety, we'll see exactly what they want to do here, but it doesn't seem to me like the Giants have a lot of money to spend right now unless they restructure some contracts. So, if we're looking at, let's see, some safeties that are still available on the open market. I know Justin Simmons is still there. Jamal Adams, who I do not want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Eddie Jackson's a little bit older. Quandre Diggs, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, a lot of people really, really like. Poyer now 32 years old. Probably, he got a cheap deal from the Bills. I kind of feel like Poyer makes sense for the Giants, former Buffalo Bill, guy they drafted a couple years ago, and Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen were there. So, if they gave him, let's say, a 1-year deal or even a 2-year deal at, I don't know, maybe 12 mil, 10 mil, $5-6 million per season. I feel like that's fair value for him right now, based on the fact that he's had some issues, and obviously a little bit older. So I feel like that's fine value for him, and front load that money in terms of dead money, and then you can kind of get out of the deal after 1 year if need be. So maybe Jordan Poyer is not a bad alternative for the Giants. They're definitely going to be more value bargain bin shopping at this point in time, if I had to imagine. Cornerbacks barely have moved off the market. J.C. Jackson, Dory Jackson, Kendall Fuller, Stephon Gilmore, Micah Hyde, strong safety more so, Avonta Maddox, Patrick Peterson, Jordan Poyer, obviously free safety, C.J. Henderson, Jordan Lewis. There's a ton of cornerbacks on this open market, ton of them. The Giants can probably wait, see who falls. They looked at Darius Williams, I think, and he signed with the Rams, I believe, on a 3-year, $30 million deal, something like that. So he's off the board. They obviously they didn't want to give 10 mil to a CB. So we're probably looking in the 5 to 6 mil range for a CB2 at this point in time, because there is so many value grabs here. I think they'll probably wait a couple days, see who falls through the cracks, and try to get one of these guys on a much more affordable contract. And then maybe throw a mid-round pick at cornerback. Maybe Cordell Flott competes for it. We'll see what happens there. But is there anyone that stands out to you for the safety and cornerback position specifically?
I like Jordan Poyer. I think that's a good call out. He's got familiarity, of course, with the regime, of course, being from the Buffalo Bills, knowing Joe Schoen, knowing Brian Daboll. That one makes a lot of sense. Cornerbacks, though, I'd have to take a look at the market once again. I think that there's probably still some names out there. I saw Kenny Moore. That's a player that I mentioned. He signed. I know Sean Murphy-Bunting signed, which I really would have liked for the Giants, but they were busy negotiating on the Brian Burns front when that went down. So I'm not sure who's out there necessarily, but they do need to add somebody at CB2, right? Like when you're looking at where the Giants are and who they have as their starters, it's getting a little bit murky as to who's going to play cornerback alongside Deonte Banks. And you know what, Alex? I will say I think it's a sneaky need for the Giants in the draft that maybe they do need to take a cornerback earlier than we might have expected. Of course, going corner in the first round of last year's draft. They also got Trey Hawkins in the later rounds of the draft. So, those are players that we thought were maybe going to be building blocks for the team long term. But if you're looking short term, needing a CB2, let's look at some of these names available. Of course, you do have a guy like C.J. Henderson from Carolina. That could be an interesting one. Steven Nelson from Houston, 31 years old. That's a big-time veteran. If you want to go more towards the higher price tag guys, J.C. Jackson. He was cut by New England. And I would throw out there Kendall Fuller if you really want to make a splash. I think that he's probably going to be a little bit more expensive, but I don't think the Giants are in a position to spend big money at cornerback. I think that they have to go for a lot of these lesser known guys, a Trey Flowers, or some of these more mid-tier free agents, maybe looking at like a Rock Ya-Sin from Baltimore. It's kind of slim pickings out there at CB2, but we'll see who they ultimately land. They have to get somebody. I think the Giants are still going to be negotiating with cornerbacks and finding somebody, and in the coming days, I do expect them to sign somebody. However, I don't think you guys should expect them to be paying more than $7 million in AAV for a cornerback. I just don't think they realistically can. They're running low on cap space. Right now, as of the time that we're recording this, they have about $9 million in salary cap space, not factoring in a few of the contracts that they just signed, though. So they're going to have to make some big moves, notably some restructurings. I think they have to restructure the deals of both Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence if they want to keep their head above water this offseason, Alex. So I guess before we wrap, that's what I want to ask you is how do you feel about that? The Giants are in the salary cap situation, $9 million left, $2 million in effective salary cap space, but they just added another $5 million player, so do the math there. They're running out of money. Actually, they're in the negatives now. They have to make a move. So restructuring Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence, or at least one of the two, seems necessary. They have to make one of those moves. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's a good idea? Are you comfortable with that? Do you think maybe there could be some cause for concern with restructuring these deals?
Not necessarily. They're going to have to restructure them anyway long term. And assuming they take the out and Daniel Jones contract, they can open up a lot of money next year, $30 million maximum. Unless we could open up a little bit more. It's going to be a topic of discussion for Anthony and I over the next couple of days. We'll do a video on the idea of maybe cutting Daniel Jones sooner than that. So what that would look financially for the Giants at the very least, so you guys know and have the information. But rather, I know they can open up $25 million max from cutting, or rather restructuring, not cutting, Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence's contract. However, also important to note that I think the number is $18 million that they can save from restructuring Brian Burns' contract too. So they did leave themselves a little bit of room there in case they need it. And $18 million is the equivalent of like a very solid guard apparently these days. So if the Giants were like, well, let's restructure that contract, add a really solid guard, they could do that. Or that's the equivalent of Xavier McKinney, for a season. That's the equivalent of whatever name you want to throw into that kind of threshold. So, the Giants do have ways to open up money. 25 mil would go a long way right now. I know they're in the negatives. They'll have enough to sign their draft class and this and that. I wonder if there are some players though that the Giants would consider cutting. We still don't know the future of Darren Waller, so keep that in mind. That's $7 million right there if he does end up retiring. And at this point, I think they might be thinking he's going to retire because we haven't heard anything about that, probably waiting until after free agency. Maybe they're like, yeah, like we're just going to cut you if you're not going to retire. So, you can make up the decision on your own. Who else could be cut that would save us a little bit of money? Not Jason Pinnock. Aaron Robinson could save us 1.4 mil. He's good as gone if I had to guess. Carlos Basham, 1.4 mil. He's probably good as gone if I had to guess there too. Gary Brightwell saves $1 million. He's probably gone because they drafted Eric Gray last year. For the most part, I think that's pretty much it. They have other guys like Deion Jackson or Tyree Jackson, Stanley Thomas Oliver, like guys that are like veteran minimums or, late round draft pick salaries. You could get rid of them, but they basically just get replaced by other players. Again, it's just $1 million there, $2 million here, a couple million there. There's ways and players that are going to be cut that will certainly free up some money for the Giants. But we'll keep you guys updated on those. Any worthwhile expenses that they offload to add some more salary space to get them back in the positive. But I do expect a couple restructures over the next couple of weeks, 100%.
Yep, me too. I think they have to make some moves to get themselves into a more comfortable salary cap position. But for now, we'll keep you guys updated. It's going to be interesting to see who they target at safety, at cornerback. Interior defensive line is another one, and they just lost Ashawn Robinson. They're going to have to add another man into that defensive line sooner rather than later. Again, a lot of these needs will be addressed in the draft, but in the meantime, they're going to need to find some guys who are willing to sign to like veteran minimum deals, I would assume. Like they got to get some really cheap guys in here, just get some bodies. They have 60-something players rostered. They got to get that number up to 90. Keep that in mind. You got to have 90 going into training camp. So Giants have a lot of moves to make, a lot of moves left to make, rather. And, of course, we're going to continue to update you on all of that stuff regarding the New York Giants right here on Fireside Giants. So Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.